In 2016, Dr. Marcus Holloway, a renowned philosophy professor turned hermit, walked into the Colorado Rockies carrying only a weathered backpack and a journal filled with existential musings. He was pursuing what he called the ultimate meditation, complete isolation from civilization to confront the deepest questions of human existence. When he failed to return from his spiritual quest, search teams scoured thousands of acres of wilderness, but found nothing. The official conclusion was tragic but simple. The mountains had claimed another unprepared soul. The case went cold, filed away as another cautionary tale about venturing too far into the wild alone. But last month, loggers working a remote section of Pike National Forest noticed something bizarre carved deep into the bark of a 400-year-old ponderosa pine. Not random scratches or initials, but precise coordinates, latitude and longitude carved with surgical precision. When those coordinates were plugged into GPS, they pointed to a location that would shatter everything investigators thought they knew about Dr. Marcus Holloway's disappearance. Before we dive into this incredible discovery, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt called to completely disconnect from the world to find answers within yourself? And what's the most remote place you've ever been? Drop your location and experiences in the comments below. Also, if you're fascinated by stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. The first signs that something was wrong with Dr. Marcus Holloway appeared in the spring of 2015. Faculty meetings at the University of Colorado Boulder had always been contentious, but Marcus's behavior had become increasingly erratic. Where once he'd been the voice of measured reason in philosophical debates, now he questioned everything. Not just academic theories, but the entire foundation of modern intellectual life. Professor David Ashton, the department chair, first noticed the change during a routine curriculum review. Marcus, normally the most prepared member of the faculty, arrived disheveled and distracted. His office, once a model of academic organization, had transformed into something resembling a survivalist's research center. Books on hermits, mystics, and wilderness survival crowded the shelves, pushing aside decades of philosophical texts. What most of his colleagues didn't know was that Marcus's transformation had deeper roots than a simple midlife philosophical crisis. Before earning his doctorate in philosophy at age 32, Marcus had spent nearly a decade as a structural engineer, specializing in historical construction techniques. His undergraduate work in civil engineering, combined with a master's degree in archaeological preservation, had given him extensive knowledge of ancient building methods and materials science. His path to philosophy had begun during restoration work on medieval monasteries in Europe, where he became fascinated by the intersection of spiritual practice and architectural design. How does the space we inhabit shape the thoughts we think? Had been the central question of his doctoral dissertation, which explored the relationship between monastic architecture and contemplative philosophy. But by 2015, Marcus felt that 30 years of academic theorizing had led him away from the hands-on understanding that had originally inspired his philosophical work. His office transformation reflected this growing obsession with practical knowledge. Alongside survival manuals, he collected books on traditional crafts, stone carving, primitive metallurgy, astronomical observation without modern instruments. "Marcus," Ashton recalled saying during your last normal conversation, "you're canceling classes, avoiding colleagues. The students are asking questions I can't answer." Marcus had looked up from a book about Tibetan hermit construction techniques, his eyes distant. "David, we spend our lives teaching about the meaning of existence, but when was the last time any of us actually built something with our hands, created shelter, carved meaning into stone, lived according to the principles we only discuss in theory?" The final straw came with Marcus's last published paper. The illusion of connection, why solitude is the only path to truth. The 47-page manuscript argued that all human relationships were elaborate forms of self-deception, preventing individuals from confronting the fundamental reality of consciousness through direct, unmediated experience. Behind the academic facade, Marcus was grappling with personal demons that made his philosophical crisis more devastating. His divorce from Patricia had been finalized 6 months earlier, a 23-year marriage ending in bitter accusations and custody battles. His 2 adult children, Alex and Rachel, had chosen sides, and Marcus found himself increasingly isolated from the family he'd once considered his anchor. The tipping point came on September 12, 2016. Maintenance staff found Marcus's office completely cleaned out, with only one note left on his desk, addressed to Professor Ashton. "I've spent 30 years teaching about the meaning of existence. Now I need to build it." Security footage from the university parking garage showed Marcus loading a Toyota 4Runner with camping equipment and boxes of books. Not just survival guides, but his entire collection of engineering texts, medieval construction manuals, and astronomical calculation charts. His final recorded purchase was $2,000 worth of survival gear from a Boulder outdoor store. But store records also showed he'd been acquiring specialized tools over the previous months: geological hammers, precision chisels, metallurgy equipment. The store clerk, Miguel Santos, remembered Marcus's systematic approach. He wasn't buying like someone planning a camping trip. He asked detailed questions about tool durability, metal composition, which equipment would last longest in harsh conditions. Said he was planning an extended research project in remote areas. When Marcus failed to show up for the fall semester, Professor Ashton contacted the Boulder Police Department. Detective Ray Morrison was assigned to the case, initially treating it as a routine wellness check that would likely end with an embarrassed professor returning from an extended research expedition. But as days turned into weeks, the investigation intensified. Marcus had given no indication of where he was going or when he planned to return. His bank accounts remained untouched after his equipment purchases. His cell phone had been turned off, and his credit cards showed no activity. Search and rescue coordinator Lisa Valdez assembled a team to canvass the most likely areas where Marcus might have gone. His vehicle was found 3 weeks after his disappearance at a remote trailhead near Mount Evans, 40 miles west of Boulder. The truck sat in the small dirt parking area like an abandoned monument to a man who had simply walked away from his life. Inside the 4Runner, investigators found evidence that this was no impulsive disappearance. The back seat contained detailed topographic maps of the Colorado Rockies, with several locations circled in red ink. But these weren't random wilderness areas. Marcus had identified locations with specific geological features: natural cave systems, water sources, and mineral deposits that would be valuable for primitive construction work. Wilderness survival manuals lay open to chapters on shelter construction and water location, but alongside them were engineering texts open to sections on stone cutting techniques and primitive metallurgy. His geological survey maps showed detailed notations about rock formations suitable for carving and areas likely to contain iron ore. Most telling were handwritten notes in the margins of his maps. Phrases like "complete isolation necessary for authentic construction" and "the path to truth requires building with one's own hands" suggested that Marcus hadn't simply gotten lost. He had planned to disappear and build something in the wilderness.
The search operation covered 50 square miles of rugged terrain. Helicopter surveys flew grid patterns over valleys and ridgelines, while ground teams followed every trail Marcus might have taken. They found tantalizing clues: a campfire site with fresh ashes, boot prints matching Marcus's hiking boots, and a torn piece of fabric from what appeared to be his jacket, caught on a pine branch. "We followed every lead," Lisa Valdez later recalled. The tracks suggested he'd been moving systematically, Not like someone who was lost, but like someone who was surveying terrain for a specific purpose. But then, the first major snowfall hit in mid-October, and the trail went completely cold. After 6 weeks of intensive searching, the operation was officially called off. The mountains had claimed another victim, investigators concluded. Detective Morrison filed his final report with the familiar conclusion: death by exposure, body likely never to be recovered due to the vast and unforgiving terrain of the Colorado Rockies. Marcus Holloway was declared legally dead 18 months later. His children inherited his modest estate, his university colleagues held a memorial service, and his story became another cautionary tale about the dangers of venturing unprepared into the wilderness. For 8 years, the case remained closed. Tom Brennan had been logging the Colorado Rockies for 23 years, and he developed an eye for the unusual. On a crisp October morning in 2024, his crew was working a contracted section of Pike National Forest, clearing deadfall and diseased trees to prevent wildfire spread. It was routine work, the kind of forest management that kept the ecosystem healthy and communities safe. But when they encountered the ancient ponderosa pine, Tom knew immediately something was different. The tree was magnificent, 400 years old, 8 feet in diameter, with a crown that stretched toward the sky like a cathedral spire. Forest Service regulations protected trees of this age and size, marking them as untouchable monuments to the wilderness's deep history. Tom's crew had worked around dozens of such giants over the years, but this one had fresh scars in its bark. "Hey, Tom," called out his assistant foreman, Jake Mitchell, "you need to see this." Tom approached the massive trunk, squinting at what Jake had discovered 6 feet up from the base. The bark showed clear tool marks, too precise and deliberate to be natural damage from wildlife or weather. Someone had carved into this ancient tree, and recently. Upon closer inspection, Tom realized what he was looking at: GPS coordinates, carved with surgical precision into the living bark. The numbers were deep enough to be permanent, but weathered enough to suggest they'd been there for several years. 39.7392 degrees north, 105.8123 degrees west. "That's not random vandalism," Tom muttered, photographing the carving with his phone. "Someone wanted these coordinates to be found." Jake pulled out his GPS unit and punched in the numbers. The coordinates pointed to a location 12 miles deeper into the wilderness, in an area known locally as the Narrows, a series of hidden canyons that even experienced hikers rarely visited. Tom reported the discovery to Forest Service Dispatch, describing the unusual carving and providing the coordinates. Within hours, the information had made its way to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, where a database search linked the coordinates to the area where Dr. Marcus Holloway had disappeared 8 years earlier. Lieutenant Ray Morrison, now promoted from his detective rank, received the call on a Tuesday afternoon. The same man who had closed the Holloway case in 2016 found himself staring at evidence that the missing philosophy professor might still be connected to the wilderness that had supposedly claimed his life. "The coordinates point to terrain we searched extensively in 2016, Morrison told his team. "But it's also some of the most rugged backcountry in Colorado. If someone carved those numbers recently, they had to have accessed that area through routes we never explored." Morrison assembled a small expedition team: himself, Forest Service guide Carlos Rivera, and archaeological consultant Dr. Rebecca Torres. Dr. Torres specialized in historical human habitation patterns, and it worked with law enforcement on several cases involving remote structures and cave systems. Historical research revealed that the Narrows had been used by Native American tribes for vision quests and spiritual retreats. The area's natural isolation and challenging terrain made it ideal for individuals seeking complete separation from the outside world. If Marcus Holloway was searching for ultimate solitude, the coordinates pointed to one of the few places in Colorado where a person could truly disappear. As Morrison reviewed Marcus's case file, he was struck by details he'd forgotten over the years. Marcus wasn't just a philosophy professor. His background in structural engineering and archaeological preservation meant he had practical skills that most academics lacked. If anyone could survive in remote wilderness while undertaking complex construction projects, Marcus had the technical knowledge to attempt it. The team prepared for what they expected to be a challenging day hike into unmapped territory. They packed for overnight camping, though Morrison hoped they'd find answers quickly enough to return the same day. None of them anticipated that they were about to uncover one of the most disturbing and complex disappearance cases in Colorado history. As they loaded their packs and checked their gear, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that the carved coordinates weren't random. Someone had spent considerable time and effort creating a permanent message in the bark of that ancient tree. The question was whether they were about to find Marcus Holloway's remains or something much more complicated.
The hike to the Narrows tested every member of Morrison's team. The GPS coordinates led them through terrain that seemed impossible for a 54-year-old philosophy professor to navigate, let alone survive in. They spent 6 hours climbing through loose scree, navigating dense forest, and traversing narrow canyon passages that required technical climbing skills. If Marcus Holloway came through here 8 years ago, Carlos Rivera said, checking his GPS as they approached the coordinates, his engineering background would have been essential. This isn't terrain for casual hikers. The coordinates led them to a small valley, completely hidden from aerial view, nestled between towering rock walls that formed a natural amphitheater. As soon as they entered the space, Dr. Torres began pointing out signs of human activity that would have been invisible to casual observers. "Look at these fire rings," she said, kneeling beside several stone circles. "They're not random camping spots. They're arranged in a deliberate pattern, like workstations." She moved to examine other features: carefully stacked stones, carved symbols on rock faces, and cleared pathways that followed natural contours but had been deliberately maintained. But it was the construction techniques that immediately caught Dr. Torres's archaeological eye. Whoever built these structures understood traditional masonry methods. Look at how these stones are fitted, no mortar, but perfectly stable. This is sophisticated dry stone construction that requires significant technical knowledge. Morrison documented everything with his camera, feeling the familiar excitement of a case breaking open. "Dr. Torres, what kind of symbols are we looking at?" "Meditation markers," she replied, running her fingers over carved spirals and geometric patterns. "But they're combined with engineering notation? Stress calculations, load-bearing assessments? It's like someone was documenting both spiritual and structural development simultaneously." Carlos made the major discovery. While Morrison and Dr. Torres examined the symbols, the forest guide had been following a subtle path that led to a large boulder near the center of the valley. Carved into its surface, in the same precise style as the tree coordinates, was a message: MH, Engineering the Soul, where structure meets consciousness. "Marcus Holloway," Morrison breathed. "And that's not the philosophy professor talking, that's the engineer." Near the boulder, they found evidence of sophisticated planning and construction. A shelter had been built using advanced dry stone techniques, positioned to take maximum advantage of natural windbreaks and water sources. But this wasn't primitive survival construction. It showed knowledge of thermodynamics, structural engineering, and water management systems. Inside the shelter, wrapped in plastic and preserved from weather, were several pages from engineering notebooks alongside philosophical journals. The entries were dated, and the dates told a story that fundamentally changed everything they thought they knew about the case. Day 127. The medieval builders were right about thermal mass in stone construction. My engineering training is proving as valuable as I hoped. The cave modifications are proceeding according to plan. Day 1247. I have found it. Not death, as they will assume, but transformation. The coordinates on the pine are my breadcrumbs, but not back to civilization, forward to truth, constructed stone by stone. Morrison felt his pulse quicken as he read. Day 1247 suggested Marcus had been counting since his disappearance in 2016. If the math was correct, these entries had been written more than 3 years after he was presumed dead. He didn't die in 2016, Morrison said quietly. He's been building something out here. Dr. Torres examined the construction evidence around the valley. This makes much more sense now, she said. These aren't survival structures. They're the work of someone with formal training in construction and engineering. The sophistication level matches what you'd expect from someone with Marcus's educational background. As they explored further, they discovered that the valley was just the beginning. A series of stone markers led deeper into the canyon system, each carved with increasingly complex symbols that combined philosophical concepts with engineering diagrams. The markers formed a deliberate path toward what appeared to be a cliff face at the far end of the valley. He's created a construction site, Dr. Torres observed. Each marker represents a phase of development, documenting both the physical building process and his psychological transformation. This is extraordinary, a real-time record of someone using construction work as a form of philosophical practice. The team followed the marked path for over an hour, the symbols becoming more intricate and technically sophisticated with each step. The trail led them through narrow passages between towering rock walls, across streams bridged with expertly engineered stonework, and up steep inclines that had been modified with handholds and structural supports. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a massive rock wall rising vertically from a small clearing. But Dr. Torres's archaeological training helped her notice what others would miss: subtle signs of construction that suggested this wasn't a natural barrier, but an engineered entrance. Small stones were arranged in patterns that served both decorative and structural purposes, and closer inspection revealed that the apparent solid rock face contained a carefully concealed opening. The camouflage work showed the same engineering precision as everything else they'd discovered. After an hour of careful examination, they found it. A narrow crevice in the cliff face, concealed not just by vegetation, but with sophisticated stonework that made the entrance nearly invisible even at close range. Morrison radioed their position to dispatch and established communication protocols. If Marcus Holloway was still alive somewhere, in what appeared to be an extensive construction project, this had officially become a potential rescue operation rather than a body recovery. As they prepared to enter the hidden passage, each team member understood that they were about to discover what 8 years of isolation had allowed a brilliant engineer-turned-philosopher to construct in one of the most remote locations in Colorado. The opening led to a natural cave system that had been extensively modified using sophisticated engineering techniques. Hand-carved steps descended into darkness, their surfaces worn smooth by years of use and designed with proper rise-to-run ratios that showed formal knowledge of stair construction. The walls displayed not just carved symbols, but technical diagrams showing load calculations, ventilation planning, and structural modifications. Morrison's LED flashlight swept across the entrance chamber, revealing a space that demonstrated the fusion of Marcus's engineering background with his philosophical quest. "My God," he whispered, "Dr. Torres, this is what happens when a structural engineer decides to build his own monastery." The main chamber was approximately 30 feet in diameter, with a vaulted ceiling that opened to a precisely calculated natural skylight. The opening wasn't random. It had been enlarged and shaped to provide optimal illumination during specific hours while maintaining structural integrity. The engineering required to modify a natural cave opening without causing collapse would have demanded extensive knowledge of rock mechanics. The floor had been carefully leveled using proper grading techniques and covered with flat stones arranged in geometric patterns that served both aesthetic and functional purposes. The pattern actually created optimal acoustics for meditation while providing proper drainage for moisture management. Stone seats had been carved directly from the living rock, but their positioning showed understanding of ergonomics and sight lines. Each seat was calculated for proper meditation posture while maintaining visual connection to the chamber's focal points. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Torres said, examining the carved stone seats. "This level of precision would have required not just stone carving skills, but knowledge of human factors engineering. We're looking at thousands of hours of work, but it's all been done according to formal engineering principles." Evidence of long-term habitation was everywhere, but it was systematically planned rather than improvised. A sleeping area had been carved into one wall using proper excavation techniques that maintained structural stability. The food storage system utilized the cave's natural cool temperatures, but had been enhanced with engineered ventilation that maintained optimal humidity levels. Most impressive was the water management system. An ingenious network of carved channels directed natural seepage into stone basins, but the system included settling tanks, filtration chambers, and overflow controls that demonstrated advanced knowledge of hydraulic engineering. But it was the library that revealed the true scope of Marcus's preparation and ongoing work. Shelves carved into the rock walls held not just his philosophical journals, but his complete collection of engineering textbooks, construction manuals, and technical references. Books on structural analysis, material science, and archaeological construction methods shared space with works on consciousness studies and meditation practice. Maps and technical drawings covered entire wall sections, showing not just the immediate cave system, but detailed plans for an extensive underground complex. The engineering drawings included stress calculations, material specifications, and construction sequences that would have challenged professional architects. Morrison carefully opened one of the earliest journals, finding entries that documented Marcus's systematic approach to transforming from professor to underground architect. Day 89. My engineering training is proving invaluable. Cave modification requires understanding both structural geology and load distribution. Each stone I move must be calculated to maintain overall stability. Day 203. Discovered iron ore deposits in the eastern cave system. My metallurgy knowledge from preservation work will allow me to forge proper tools. The ancients knew something we've forgotten, that working with your hands changes how you think. Day 456. The astronomical observatory design is complete. By aligning openings with celestial mechanics, I can create a natural calendar system. Architecture and astronomy were never separate disciplines. Only modern education divided them. Dr. Torres examined the construction techniques used throughout the chamber. This explains everything that seemed impossible. Marcus didn't learn these skills in isolation. He brought formal engineering training and adapted it to cave construction. The sophistication we're seeing represents the application of professional-level knowledge to an unprecedented project. Carlos discovered that the chamber was far from the end of Marcus's construction. Several passages led deeper into the mountain, their entrances carefully engineered with proper ventilation and structural support. "Lieutenant," he called out, "this cave system has been extensively modified. These passages appear to lead to multiple other chambers, all showing the same level of engineering sophistication." As they prepared to explore deeper, Morrison noticed something that chilled him. The most recent modifications, new tool marks, fresh construction materials, and updated technical drawings appeared to have been completed within the last few months. Marcus Holloway wasn't just alive, he had been continuing his underground construction project right up to the present. The team established base camp in the meditation chamber and prepared to follow the passages deeper into what was clearly an extensive underground complex. Each journal entry, each technical drawing, each precisely calculated modification told the story of a brilliant engineer's 8-year project to construct the most sophisticated hermitage in modern history. Morrison keyed his radio to check in with dispatch, but found that the cave system blocked transmission completely. They were on their own in Marcus Holloway's carefully engineered philosophical laboratory, following the path of a man who had spent 8 years applying professional-level construction skills to building his own isolated world. As Detective Morrison and Dr. Torres spent hours reading through Marcus's journals and technical notes by LED flashlight, a fascinating pattern emerged that went beyond simple wilderness survival. The writings documented 8 years of systematic engineering development combined with progressive philosophical evolution. The earliest entries, dated from late 2016, showed Marcus methodically applying his engineering knowledge to cave modification while grappling with the psychological challenges of isolation. Day 127. Structural analysis of the main chamber complete. The natural limestone formation will support significant modification if I work systematically. My medieval preservation experience is directly applicable. The same principles that guided monastery builders apply here. Day 203. Successfully forged first set of stone cutting tools using ore from the eastern passages. My metallurgy training from restoration work is proving invaluable. The iron content is excellent, and I've established proper forge operations in the workshop chamber. Day 341. Anatomical studies progressing. Without access to medical texts, I'm documenting the changes in my own body as it adapts to this environment. My engineering background in human factors design provides the framework for understanding physical adaptation. Dr. Torres analyzed the technical drawings alongside the journal entries, finding perfect correlation between Marcus's written plans and the sophisticated modifications throughout the cave system. Detective Morrison, she said, what we're seeing is the systematic application of professional engineering knowledge to an unprecedented construction project. Marcus didn't develop these skills in isolation. He brought them with him and adapted them to cave construction over 8 years of continuous work. By the second and third years, Marcus's journals showed him expanding beyond basic cave modification to complex multi-chamber construction projects. Year 2. The workshop chamber is operational. Forge capabilities now include tool making, hardware fabrication, and precision instrument construction. My background in archaeological preservation techniques provides the methodology for working with primitive tools to achieve modern precision standards. Year 3. Observatory construction complete. By applying my astronomical calculation training and structural engineering knowledge, I've created a natural calendar system that rivals ancient astronomical sites. The alignment calculations required months of celestial observation combined with precision stone cutting. Morrison noted how Marcus's handwriting evolved over time, incorporating technical symbols and engineering notation alongside philosophical observations. Dr. Torres, look at how his documentation style changes. Early entries read like engineering reports. Later ones integrate technical data with philosophical observations. The journal entries from the middle period, years 2019 to 2021, showed Marcus achieving construction goals that would have challenged professional teams with modern equipment. Year 4. Water management system complete.
Hydraulic engineering principles applied to natural cave hydrology have created a sustainable freshwater supply with proper filtration and temperature control. The system can support long-term habitation while maintaining optimal conditions for meditation practice. Year 5. Discovered additional cave systems accessible through controlled excavation. My knowledge of rock mechanics and structural geology allows safe expansion without compromising overall stability. Each new chamber represents both engineering achievement and spiritual development. Dr. Torres made a crucial discovery when she found technical drawings that showed Marcus had been building on the work of previous inhabitants. Detective Morrison, look at these earlier sketches. Marcus didn't start from nothing. He found evidence of previous cave modifications and used his engineering knowledge to analyze and improve upon earlier construction. Year 6. Analysis of previous inhabitants' work complete. The ancient builders understood thermodynamics but lacked knowledge of stress distribution. By combining their intuitive wisdom with modern engineering principles, I can create structures that honor traditional methods while achieving superior performance. The most impressive entries came from recent years, where Marcus documented construction achievements that demonstrated master-level skill in multiple engineering disciplines. Year 7. Metallurgy operations now include precision tool manufacturing, hardware production, and alloy experimentation. My background in material science combined with 8 years of practical experience has created capabilities that exceed most modern workshops. Year 8. Anatomical documentation complete. 8 years of physical adaptation combined with detailed medical observation has produced the most comprehensive study of human physiological change under extreme isolation conditions. My engineering approach to biological systems has yielded unprecedented data. Morrison realized that Marcus's achievement went far beyond survival or even sophisticated construction. He had created a functional research facility using only knowledge he brought with him and materials he could find or make. Dr. Torres, these aren't the writings of someone who went crazy in the wilderness. This is the documentation of someone who spent 8 years applying advanced engineering knowledge to build something unprecedented. The most recent entries, dated just 3 months earlier, showed Marcus preparing for what he called the final integration, not death, but the completion of his construction project and philosophical development. The coordinate system on the pine tree serves multiple functions. For those with engineering background, it provides precise location data. For those seeking spiritual transformation, it represents the intersection of mathematical precision and natural wisdom. The tree chose to preserve my message because it understood the integration I have achieved. Crowlis returned from exploring one of the side passages with news that confirmed Marcus's ongoing activity. Lieutenant, the construction work is recent and extensive. There are at least 6 major chambers, each showing sophisticated engineering modifications. Tool marks indicate work within the last few months.
Morrison's growing concern was confirmed when they found evidence that Marcus had been monitoring the outside world more than his isolation suggested. Hidden among his technical drawings were sketches of the logging operation, detailed observations of Forest Service activities, and notes that suggested he had been tracking human activity in the area for years. Following Carlos through carefully concealed passages, the team discovered that Marcus's underground world extended far beyond the meditation chamber. A workshop area contained not just stone carving tools, but a complete metallurgy operation with forges, anvils, and precision equipment that demonstrated master-level craftsmanship. In another chamber, they found what could only be described as an engineering laboratory. Technical drawings covered the walls, showing structural calculations, materials analysis, and construction plans that would have challenged professional architects. The sophistication suggested Marcus had not just maintained his engineering skills during isolation, but had developed them to extraordinary levels. "Detective Morrison," Dr. Torres said, her voice filled with amazement. "What we're looking at is someone who used 8 years of isolation to become a master craftsman in multiple disciplines. The engineering knowledge he brought with him provided the foundation, but what he's achieved goes beyond anything taught in universities." But it was Morrison who made the connection that changed everything. Reading deeper into the journals, he found entries that revealed Marcus had been expecting their arrival. "The coordinates will eventually attract those capable of understanding what I have built. When the investigation team arrives, and they will arrive, they will find someone who has successfully integrated engineering precision with philosophical truth. The demonstration will be complete." The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. The carved coordinates weren't just markers. They were part of an elaborate plan to demonstrate what Marcus had achieved during his 8 years of underground construction. And based on the sophistication of the cave system and the evidence of recent activity, Marcus Holloway was still alive somewhere in the deeper chambers, putting the finishing touches on the most elaborate hermitage construction project in modern history. Following the journal's references to integrated workshop systems, the team discovered that the meditation chamber was only the beginning of Marcus's underground engineering complex. A carefully concealed passage hidden behind engineered stonework that demonstrated advanced masonry skills led to a series of deeper caves that showed even more sophisticated construction. The first chamber they entered was Marcus's primary workshop, and it revealed the true scope of his engineering capabilities. Stone carving tools filled handmade wooden shells, but these weren't crude implements. They were precision instruments crafted with the skill of a master toolmaker. Each tool showed evidence of continuous refinement and improvement over years of use. But it was the metallurgy operation that truly demonstrated Marcus's engineering mastery. A sophisticated forge system utilized natural cave ventilation combined with engineered airflow to achieve temperatures that would challenge modern equipment. The forge setup showed knowledge of combustion engineering, material science, and precision metalworking that exceeded most professional workshops. "These aren't primitive tools," Dr. Torres said, examining Marcus's handmade equipment. "This is sophisticated manufacturing. Look at the precision of these measuring instruments, the quality of the metalwork. Marcus used his engineering background to create industrial-level capabilities using only natural materials." Partially completed sculptures lined the workshop walls, but these weren't random art projects. The carved figures documented Marcus's philosophical evolution, showing the progression from realistic human forms to increasingly abstract representations of consciousness and awareness. Each sculpture demonstrated not just artistic skill, but understanding of anatomical structure and material properties. Detailed anatomical drawings covered the walls, but now Morrison understood their origin. Marcus hadn't mysteriously acquired medical knowledge. He had applied his engineering training to systematic observation and documentation of human adaptation. These drawings are as scientifically rigorous as any medical textbook. Evidence of advanced metallurgy was everywhere. A primitive but highly effective smelting operation had been used to process local ore into high-quality metal. The chemistry knowledge required would have come from Marcus's background in material science and archaeological preservation, where understanding metal composition was essential for restoration work. The next chamber revealed Marcus's astronomical observatory, and it demonstrated the practical application of his engineering training to celestial observation. The chamber featured multiple precisely calculated openings that had been carved to track celestial movements with remarkable accuracy. But this wasn't guesswork. Technical drawings showed the mathematical calculations required to align the openings with astronomical events. This explains the sophisticated astronomical calculations we found earlier, Dr. Torres said, studying the observatory setup. Marcus used his engineering background in measurement and documentation to create a comprehensive study of human adaptation. These drawings are as scientifically rigorous as any medical textbook. Star charts carved into the ceiling showed incredible precision, but they made sense when viewed as engineering drawings rather than artistic representations. Marcus had applied drafting skills and mathematical precision to create functional astronomical instruments using stone and careful calculation. Carlos discovered that the observatory connected to an even more elaborate cave system. He called out from a passage they hadn't yet explored. This underground complex is like a complete research facility. I count at least 8 major chambers, each one showing professional-level construction and engineering.
Reading deeper into the journals, Morrison found entries that explained Marcus's systematic approach to skill development and construction planning. Year 3. My engineering education provided the theoretical framework, but 8 years of practical application have developed capabilities I never possessed in academic life. Working with primitive tools and natural materials has actually enhanced my understanding of fundamental engineering principles. Year 5. The metallurgy skills I learned for archaeological preservation have evolved into full manufacturing capability. By combining historical techniques with modern material science, I can produce tools and hardware that exceed the quality of mass-manufactured items. Year 7. Integration complete. The false separation between engineering and philosophy that characterized my academic career has dissolved. Every structural calculation is a meditation. Every stone placed is an act of consciousness development. Morrison realized that Marcus's achievement represented something unprecedented in modern times, someone with advanced technical training who had used extended isolation to develop practical skills to extraordinary levels. Dr. Torres, Morrison said, we're not looking at someone who mysteriously acquired impossible skills. We're seeing what happens when someone with formal engineering training spends 8 years in focused practical application without any distractions. Dr. Torres made a discovery that confirmed Marcus's ongoing presence and activity. In a storage area of the workshop, she found evidence of very recent construction work, fresh tool marks, metal shavings from recent forging operations, and modifications to the cave system that appeared to have been completed within the last few weeks. "He's still here," she said quietly, "and he's been monitoring outside activity. Look at these drawings. They show details of the logging operation, Forest Service vehicles, even sketches that appear to be based on observation of our hiking route to this location." But it was Carlos who made the discovery that transformed their investigation from archaeological exploration to immediate danger. While checking the passages they had used to enter the deeper chamber system, he found that several key routes had been sealed with precisely engineered stonework. "Lieutenant," Carlos called out, his voice tight with concern, "we may have a problem. These passages weren't blocked when we came through. Someone has been modifying the cave system while we've been exploring." As the team examined the chamber system more systematically, they realized with growing concern that the cave modifications weren't just for Marcus's use. They had been designed with knowledge of how search and rescue teams would approach and explore underground systems. The engineering showed understanding of how others would move through the space. Morrison keyed his radio, hoping to reach dispatch, but found that the deeper cave system completely blocked all radio transmission. They were isolated in Marcus Holloway's carefully engineered underground complex, and someone who had spent 8 years mastering every aspect of the cave system was demonstrating that their presence had been anticipated and planned for. The engineering excellence that had created this underground marvel had also been used to create a sophisticated trap designed by someone who understood exactly how professional search teams would approach and explore an underground site. As evening approached somewhere far above them, Detective Morrison and his team realized they were no longer investigating Marcus Holloway's disappearance. They were experiencing a demonstration of what 8 years of applied engineering knowledge could accomplish when combined with complete philosophical dedication to a single unprecedented construction project. As evening shadows began filtering through the natural skylights far above, the team made preparations to spend the night in the cave system. But as they settled into the meditation chamber, a voice echoed from somewhere in the deeper passages, calm, measured, and speaking with the precision of someone accustomed to technical communication. Detective Morrison, Dr. Torres, Carlos Rivera. The voice knew their names, and Morrison immediately understood why. Marcus had been monitoring their approach through the carefully designed acoustic properties of the cave system, enhanced by engineered sound channels that allowed observation from hidden locations. Detective Morrison, you have demonstrated the methodical approach I expected from professional investigators. Your systematic exploration of my construction work shows proper respect for engineering achievement. Now comes the more challenging question. Can you appreciate what 8 years of integrated construction and philosophical development have accomplished? Morrison drew his service weapon and activated his flashlight, scanning the chamber entrances. Marcus Holloway, this is Lieutenant Morrison with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. We're here to check on your welfare and offer assistance if you need it. Soft laughter echoed from multiple directions simultaneously, carried through the acoustic system Marcus had engineered into the cave complex. Lieutenant Morrison, a title that represents authority in a system I abandoned 8 years ago. I am no longer Marcus Holloway, university professor. That man completed his construction project and achieved integration with the philosophical principles he spent 30 years teaching but never fully understanding. A figure emerged slowly from one of the deeper passages, moving with the quiet precision of someone completely familiar with every aspect of their environment. 8 years of physical labor and minimal nutrition had transformed Marcus, but the changes went beyond mere physical adaptation. His hair and beard, completely white, were precisely maintained. His clothing was handmade but showed sophisticated construction techniques. Most striking was his bearing. He moved like someone who had achieved perfect familiarity with his constructed environment. His appearance was startling, but not that of a madman. The transformation was systematic. His body showed the adaptation of someone who had spent years in physical labor. His hands bore the marks of masterful craftsmanship, and his eyes reflected the focused intensity of an engineer who had successfully completed a major construction project.
Dr. Torres, Marcus said, acknowledging her with the respect of one professional recognizing another. Your archaeological training allows you to appreciate the construction techniques I've developed. You understand that what you've seen represents not survival, but systematic building according to traditional methods enhanced by modern engineering knowledge. Dr. Torres stepped forward carefully. Marcus, the work you've accomplished here is extraordinary. The engineering sophistication, the integration of multiple technical disciplines, the sheer scope of construction, it represents one of the most impressive building projects I've ever documented. But your family, your colleagues, they've been concerned about you for 8 years. Marcus studied her
with the focused attention of an engineer considering a technical problem. Dr. Torres, you study archaeological sites where ancient peoples constructed structures they considered sacred. But you experience those sites as historical artifacts, not as functional integration of spiritual practice with construction technique. I have built what I once could only study from a distance. He gestured to the engineered cave complex surrounding them. 8 years ago, I possessed theoretical knowledge of construction techniques, philosophical understanding of consciousness, and academic familiarity with historical building practices. I have transformed that theoretical knowledge into functional reality. Every stone placed was both engineering calculation and philosophical meditation. Morrison maintained his position, but tried to keep the situation calm. Marcus, your engineering achievements here are remarkable, but people have been mourning your death for 8 years. Don't you feel any responsibility for the pain you've caused your children? For the first time, Marcus showed uncertainty. His absolute confidence flickered, and something resembling human emotion crossed his features. Alex and Rachel, the man who was their father, possessed engineering knowledge but lacked integration with philosophical understanding. I have become what he was attempting to achieve, someone who builds reality according to conscious principle rather than social expectation. Morrison realized that Marcus wasn't preventing their departure out of madness, but out of a sincere belief that he had something valuable to demonstrate. The sealed passages weren't designed as a trap, but as a way to ensure that visitors would fully experience what he had constructed. Marcus, you can show the world what you've achieved here. Engineers, philosophers, construction professionals, they would all want to learn from what you've built. But you need to let us leave, and you need to consider returning to share this knowledge. Marcus moved closer, and Morrison can see that his years of isolation had produced not madness, but an intensity of focus that was both impressive and unsettling. Lieutenant Morrison, you represent the investigation system that concluded I was dead based on insufficient evidence. Dr. Torres represents archaeological study of construction techniques without practical application. Carlos represents forest management that treats wilderness as resource rather than location for transformation. You have each dedicated your lives to partial understanding of complete systems. He gestured to the engineered cave complex surrounding them. I offer you direct experience of what integration achieves. Remain here and observe how construction work becomes philosophical practice, how engineering calculation becomes meditation, how isolation from social distraction allows complete focus on meaningful work. Or return to your specialized roles carrying knowledge of possibilities you will never fully explore. Dr. Torres, using her understanding of both engineering and human psychology, realized that Marcus wasn't trying to imprison them. He was trying to demonstrate something he considered vitally important. As someone with his engineering knowledge, she also recognized that Marcus would have designed multiple exit routes that investigators might not have discovered. While Morrison kept Marcus engaged in conversation, Torres worked to identify alternative exit routes out of the cave system, including a concealed but not blocked ventilation channel that provided proper airflow while remaining invisible to casual observation. When Torres identified another intentionally obscured exit route, she signaled to Morrison to shift conversation to bolstering the chances of their survival and also on philosophical discourse. Marcus, what you've achieved here is remarkable, but the world above has value too. Your engineering knowledge, your construction techniques, your philosophical insights, they could benefit thousands of people. Isn't sharing knowledge part of wisdom? Marcus considered this question with the careful attention he gave to all technical problems. Lieutenant Morrison, for 30 years, I shared theoretical knowledge through academic publications and university teaching.
Theoretical sharing without practical demonstration is merely entertainment. What I have constructed here cannot be shared through description. It can only be understood through direct experience of the construction process itself. Torres found what she was looking for, an alternative exit route that Marcus had engineered for ventilation and emergency access. The passage was concealed, but not blocked, designed to provide proper airflow while remaining invisible to casual observation. As Torres prepared to lead the team toward the concealed exit, Marcus made one final attempt to communicate what he had achieved. You will return to your separate professional roles, and within weeks you will begin to doubt the integration you have witnessed here. The specialization that defines your careers will reassert itself. But when you find yourselves questioning the value of partial understanding, the coordinates remain. What I have built here will continue to demonstrate the possibility of complete integration between knowledge and practice. The team moved toward Torres's discovered exit road, but as they prepared to leave, Marcus called after them with words that would haunt their memories. 8 years ago, I walked into these mountains carrying engineering knowledge I had never fully applied and philosophical understanding I had never completely integrated. I returned to my completed construction work satisfied that the demonstration is complete. The choice between partial knowledge and integrated understanding remains available to those ready to abandon everything for complete construction of conscious reality.
The team's emergence from the cave system after 36 hours underground marked the beginning of one of the most complex missing person cases in Colorado history. As they reached the surface and re-established radio contact, Morrison realized that they weren't just reporting the discovery of Marcus Holloway, they were documenting what might be the most sophisticated individual construction project in modern American history. Within hours of their emergence, the cave entrance was secured by search and rescue teams, while engineering consultants were brought in to assess the structural modifications Marcus had made. The Colorado School of Mines sent a team of geological engineers to evaluate the construction work, and their preliminary report was extraordinary. What Dr. Holloway accomplished represents a synthesis of historical construction techniques with modern engineering knowledge, wrote lead structural engineer Dr. Patricia Hendricks. The scope and sophistication of the underground modifications would challenge a professional construction team with modern equipment. That one individual accomplished this level of work over 8 years using primitive tools demonstrates exceptional engineering capability. The FBI's psychological profiling unit struggled to categorize Marcus's case. What we're dealing with, Dr. Martinez explained Morrison, is someone who has used his professional engineering background to construct what amounts to a completely self-contained research facility. He's not technically mentally ill in any conventional sense. His construction work shows consistent, rational planning and exceptional technical execution. The ethical and legal dilemmas proved as complex as the engineering analysis. Marcus was technically not breaking any laws. He was living on public land, had no harm no one, and was surviving through skills and knowledge he had legitimately acquired. Legal experts debated whether any form of intervention was possible for someone who had clearly demonstrated both technical competence and personal autonomy. Professor David Ashton, Marcus's former colleague, struggled with the news of his discovery. The Marcus I knew was brilliant, but theoretical. He's apparently accomplished suggests he found a way to integrate his engineering background with his philosophical pursuits in ways that none of us anticipated. Whether that represents enlightenment or obsession may be impossible to determine. Dr. Torres submitted a detailed archaeological and engineering report documenting Marcus's construction work, noting that it represented the most sophisticated example of individual underground construction ever documented in North America. The technical drawings, structural modifications, and manufacturing capabilities Marcus had developed attracted attention from researchers studying both historical construction techniques and modern survival capabilities. The Colorado School of Mines requested permission to study Marcus's construction methods, particularly his metallurgy techniques and stoneworking innovations. What Dr. Holloway developed represents practical applications of engineering principles that could have significant educational value, their formal request stated. But it was the ongoing evidence of Marcus's activity that proved most intriguing to investigators. He continued to leave technical drawings and philosophical writings at predetermined locations around the cave entrance, suggesting that his construction work was continuing and expanding. His notes indicated that he had identified additional cave systems and was applying his construction techniques to create what he termed integrated building projects throughout the mountain system. Detective Morrison found himself profoundly affected by the encounter. 8 years ago, I filed a missing person report for a university professor who walked into the mountains and never returned. Today, I know that man used his engineering education and 8 years of focused work to create something unprecedented, a complete integration of practical construction skills with philosophical purpose. Dr. Torres continued monitoring the sealed cave system, noting that acoustic analysis suggested Marcus's construction activities hadn't ceased. He's still modifying and expanding the underground complex. What we discovered may represent only a portion of what he's constructed over 8 years. For Marcus's family and colleagues, his discovery brought no simple resolution. His children, Alex and Rachel, issued a statement through their attorney. "We are grateful to know our father is alive and has accomplished something extraordinary. While we cannot fully understand his choice to remain isolated, we respect that he has found a way to apply his professional knowledge to a project that clearly gives his life meaning." The story became a unique chapter in both missing person cases and engineering achievement. Marcus's integration of academic knowledge with practical construction skills challenged conventional ideas about both wilderness survival and professional development. Engineering schools began using Marcus's case to explore questions about the relationship between theoretical knowledge and practical application. Philosophy departments debated whether his integration of construction work with contemplative practice represented legitimate philosophical methodology. In the end, the coordinates carved in that ancient ponderosa pine had led investigators not to a missing person, but to a remarkable demonstration of what focused application of professional knowledge could accomplish under extreme conditions. Marcus Holloway had used his engineering education, 8 years of isolation, and access to natural materials to construct the most sophisticated individual building project in modern history. 8 years after his disappearance, investigators knew exactly where he was and what he had been doing. He had transformed from a theoretical academic into a master builder, applying advanced engineering knowledge to create an underground complex that demonstrated extraordinary integration of technical skill with philosophical purpose. The case remained officially classified as voluntary missing person with known location and demonstrated competence for self-care. It would stand as one of the most unusual disappearance cases in law enforcement history, not because the person couldn't be found, but because what he had built in isolation represented achievements that challenged conventional understanding of individual capability.
For those who had followed the coordinates carved into ancient bark and discovered the engineering marvel hidden beneath the mountains, the experience raised profound questions about the relationship between knowledge and practice, between isolation and achievement, between theoretical understanding and integrated construction of conscious reality.
Marcus Holloway had found exactly what he was searching for, a way to build his understanding of existence stone by stone, calculation by calculation, in the darkness he had engineered into his own cathedral of integrated knowledge. This story was based on fictional events created for entertainment purposes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most unusual disappearance cases involving extraordinary construction achievement, make sure to subscribe to Last Seen Stories and hit that notification bell for more incredible tales of the missing and found. What do you think about Marcus's integration of engineering and philosophy? Brilliant application of knowledge or dangerous isolation? Let me know in the comments below.